Hello, podcast family. Hope you guys are having a great day. I'm your host, Rocky Rourke, and today on the Design Break, we have a special guest, my good friend, Chris Cannon, an amazing product designer and Webflow developer. He is amazingly talented. I'm super glad that we have him on today's podcast. Without further ado, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Rocky, I appreciate that kind words there. I am Chris Cannon. Again, as Rocky said, I have been doing design for 11 years now. Truly love product design, but always have come back to do web design and web development, and have truly loved creating products in this day and age in our digital world today.
Awesome. Yeah. So why don't you, talk a bit about your background? You have an interesting background because you are a product designer, but then you also are a Webflow developer.
That's correct.
And right now, Webflow development is a very hotbed service.
Yeah, it's a hot topic right now too. Very hot topic.
Yeah. Can you talk about how you got into being a Webflow developer?
Yeah, it was actually, so in 2014, I had been going to, I always pronounce the name wrong, but Elvato. I think that's what it's pronounced, Elvato. And I would go and get templates, and then I would basically use them to create for customers. In the early days of me, before I became a product designer, I was doing web design. And so I would take those and then I would develop those using WordPress. I was really sick and tired of using WordPress. I mean, it was just, you had plugin problems, you had updates that you had to do. There was so much. It was great on the back end. You could make a lot of money for it, but for the customer, for our clients that we were working with, it was just so annoying and having to always do that. And a lot of customers are getting really tired of the way of having to go and pay for a maintenance package. So as I was looking around, I had seen Vlad and Bryant and a few other people from Webflow start posting things about it, and I was hooked. I actually started to sign up and was reviewing how things are there and taught myself how to build on Webflow, and that was about 2014, 2015, and been using it ever since. Even with Framer and other products that have come out like Squarespace or I know Shopify has theirs, Wix. Yep, that's another one.
Yep.
Never really felt so good about it. And now, actually, I'm using Webflow right now. And I don't know if you've heard of Green Sock. It's a new type of JavaScript platform where they can tie right into Webflow, but it's called GSAP. And I'm actually using my GSAP to build my portfolio and create fantastic animations while I wait for the next generation of animations from Webflow, which they call interactions.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember my first website was WordPress.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, I hated it. I didn't build it out myself. Yeah. Someone else built it for me, but it was it wasn't easy to use.
Yeah.
And I probably had maybe 2 or 3 other WordPress sites after that. And it was a lot harder to the point where I went from WordPress to Squarespace, which some people see that as like you're scaling down.
Yep.
Because it's like, Squarespace is just templates and there's not a ton of customization that you can do. But I felt like it was just so much easier than having to deal with WordPress.
Yes.
And we actually worked on the Blue Cyclops website back in, 2020?
Yep.
End of 2020 into 2021. Yep. And you were the one who actually did the Webflow development for the site. And you were soon to be working with me on the update to the Blue Cyclops website, which is currently in the mix. There's so much going on that I'm trying to get, more of it done. I have, basically picking away at things every single night whenever I have the time. But I'm excited for us to do that. And we were just trying to get a project together that ended up falling through, unfortunately. But it would have been web design and Webflow development. One of these days, we're going to get one of those projects.
We definitely are.
One thing that I kind of want to also, talk about here, and I feel like we both kind of fell into this boat here, was, I don't know, I can't remember how long ago, but you were actually laid off from being a in-house product designer.
Yep.
Yeah. And back in November, it's actually, it's actually coming up on a year since I was laid off from my full-time gig.
Yeah.
And, I'm just curious, can you talk about, when that happened and like how it all came about that you can discuss? Let's put it that way, that you can discuss.
So mine was actually mutual. I was actually going to be stepping away from the company and working on actually getting a new job. And so it was a mutual thing. And then right around the same time, it's funny actually we talk about this because I just talked to a couple of friends today who said that 50% of who was left from that company was laid off today. Yeah. It's a slippery slope at that company. But basically, in essence, what happened is I was moved over into the marketing department after doing kind of a lot of head of design. I was doing a lot of principal design, product design stuff and working in that area. And then basically moved over into marketing to help out marketing, only to basically me and the person who was running marketing, who wasn't in marketing, he was just put there. It's a startup, right? They put him in certain places. And I in essence was like, I'm ready to be done. I had been looking for previously moving on. And then they let me know, hey, we're going to decrease headcount. And I was one of them. And so but when we had the conversation, it was already mutual. But they had felt, hey, I think this is actually good for us to part ways like this. And that I won't go into any more details there, but it was actually an opportunity where I felt it was good for me and did a lot of soul searching actually from then till now.
Yeah. And how long ago was
March? It roughly ended.
March. Okay. So it was this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I was talking to someone recently, they were actually a former client, or like the point of contact was a former client. And they were telling me how last year during all of the layoffs that were going on, that the company, I'm not going to say who it was, they were just a client of mine in the past. They actually laid off 90% of their workforce, and they went straight into a streamline type of business where they had like, I think 1 or 2 designers working on a product, doing both product and marketing. That's the craziest part.
Yeah.
They had like 1 person doing all the sales, 1 person doing all the marketing. It was like, they really went from, I think it was 200 plus people down to like maybe 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 to 20 people.
Yep.
And they, this was just happened, I think like probably December of last year. And, honestly, I doubt that they're going to keep going. I hate to say it that way, cause we created some pretty cool stuff together, but it's just going down. I think they've changed CEOs a few times as well.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see like when that happens, that's a little shaky.
Yeah. It's really interesting right now as I look up from the startup perspective, or even from companies that are going on, is there's such a change here when it comes to remote life, right? Companies want us in office. We as employees are seeing that it worked when we can work from home and having a great internet access to the job site. And there's this strange push and pull that I think that's happening in our industry right now. I think across the world, obviously, about how that is. And I'm noticing that startups don't know who they are if we're not in-house. And this company actually has a new CEO. The old CEO is no longer there anymore. They went, when I started, we were at 47 people. I was hire number 12, 13.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Went to 49. And then they are now at 8 or 9.
Yeah. They're slowing down.
Yeah. Yep. So it's sad that I'm watching, good people be let go from this company and moving on. And there's other ones that actually moved on, before that even happened, and are very successful at what they're doing right now. And, it's like watching a great sports team. You watch them tank, or you watch them do the things that they can be better at, and yet policies, procedures, and people ruin good talent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that like when I was laid off, like I knew instantly that I didn't want to work for another startup. I didn't want to like try and find another job or anything like that. Instead, I knew that I wanted to go straight back into my studio, Blue Cyclops, that I kind of had put on hold.
Yeah.
I got burnt out in 2020. And in 2021, I took, the first of two full-time gigs working in house, versus lead designer, then as an art director. And after the great layoffs of 2022, I figured, you know what? I actually want to go back to working for myself. I miss that freedom that I had. And the craziest part is that, the company that ended up, laying me off, they are now one of my biggest clients.
Right.
So, you never know what can happen. In certain instances. But I'm curious, like, what was your initial plan when you were laid off?
Well, we were actually going to be building a house. So I was 2 weeks away from closing on a construction loan to build a home. So my first inclination was, I've got to get a new job to get out, to get this. Now, we had a blessing before this had happened. My wife actually had received a full-time gig as a nurse, making the same amount of money that I made when I was at the other company. So it was nice to pick everything up and kind of go with it. So it didn't hurt us. So I basically were like trying to rush. And I've applied at multiple, but we were in a different, started to notice that we were in a different, I don't know how to explain it. It just, being hired now versus before is completely different. Competition's so high because of the layoffs. Everybody's trying to get a job also. So because of that, you have to be different. And you have to evolve. And that's one thing I started to know is I'd apply for a couple of jobs here and there and see if I could get a position there. I would soon find out, I'm like, okay, competition is rough, and that I'm not displaying myself how I want people to see me. And I want to be world class. I want to be one of the best designers. That's my mentality. And so as I started to, at first it was like, get a job. Now, starting in May to now, has been reevaluate who I am, rebrand myself, help people understand where I'm coming from, that I'm a human-centric principal designer, that I want to be able to build products in a different way. And matter of fact, a good friend of mine, were just talking about this a couple of days ago. We were saying how products and brands have become, in essence, dead, to where they don't have any specialty to them, or they're not creative anymore. It's you look at X, right, and how Twitter Blue's gone and it's black. You look at Meta's, what is their Threads, right? Black. It's simple, right? Something AI would create, and it takes that humanization out of it. And I truly believe that we're hitting this point where design system, UI kits, and all that stuff is making products boring, and there's no pizzazz or, what's the word I'm looking for, love in them.
Yeah, no chutzpah.
Exactly.
Sisters, studio name.
Right.
No, I agree with you completely. It's like, and don't get me started on the whole X. I still call it Twitter. I'm not going to stop calling it Twitter. He is a moron. He lost $20 billion when he removed the Twitter bird. Like, how stupid is that? But no, I agree with you completely, because it's like, the more that you look at the brands that are coming out, is everything is so sterile.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Everything is way oversimplified.
Yeah.
Everything, is missing the character and the personality that, brands used to have. And, you look at brands like Coca-Cola, you look at brands like even Pepsi. They still have that character. They haven't gone, Pepsi kind of went that way. They kind of went the simple route, and then they came back, and now they're kind of like going back to their roots, kind of going into the 80s with their new branding and everything. But you're seeing like certain brands take off because of the fact that they are they still have that character.
That's correct. Yep.
Like character is so much, it's so important when it comes to a brand.
Look at Figma.
Especially now.
Figma is a great example.
Yeah. It's like, it's crazy to see, like, and you look at Figma, let's kind of deconstruct that. You look at Figma, their mark, their logo, right? It's very simple. It, someone might even try and say it might be kind of sterile and too simple. However, when you look at all of the supporting pieces that go into it, look at their YouTube channel, look at all of their supporting marketing materials, look at their config conference and everything. There's so much personality and character that's built into it, just like, with Adobe as well. There's so much going on, and you look at X or Twitter, and it's missing that.
Yep.
He throws a freaking grunge texture on top of the app icon.
Right.
And it had everybody like, oh, there's something wrong with my screen. Something's like on here. Like, I did that.
Yep.
My mother did that. My wife did that. I had friends like saying the exact same thing. It makes no sense, and I feel like there's going to be, in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to start seeing that either disappearing or slowly you're going to start seeing more character being brought into brands. And the ones that don't do that, I feel like they're going to fizzle out and die. And I kind of actually don't want that to happen to Twitter, because I like using it. I think it's a great communication platform for the design community, but I cannot stand Elon Musk. Can't stand him. Never will.
Yeah. His evolution of what Twitter has become. I mean, he spent the money on it. Like, I'll point that out. He spent the money on it, and he can do what he wants to do in it. But the evolution of what Twitter will become, X, I think is, for us longtime users. I mean, I've been on Twitter since 2010. I want to say maybe 11.
I can't remember. I think I got like the 13 or 14 year mark recently.
Same. I'm pretty up there too. So I've been on there for a very long time. I want to say 08 maybe, 08 or 09. But right when Twitter came out, I got my account, and I think that's hard to see. I mean, we look at the dribble update that just came out, right? We've got that aspect there. It's completely taken away what Dan had in mind when it came to the
Dan Cederholm.
Right. Yeah. So it's, we look at it and then we love these brands, and it's hard. And we can look at Apple, right? We can look at Apple and say, well, Apple went away from the colorful that they had, and then they went to, because they had a 7 color palette, and now they're, I think it was 5 or 7, I can't remember, palette, and they went away. They went over to being just the Apple icon. But see what they've done with it. Look at how the new events coming out, right? It's that icon can become anything. And I think that's what we need to evolve into when we do it. It's okay to have black buttons or dark or light, different personas of our brand. But I think there has to be a point where it's been like that. Funny thing about the X, you know that when it came out with that, the logo, and it was like switching up and doing all this RGB stuff. I didn't use that one, but I actually had something to where in my new branding for Colorful Chris, I actually had something where I love that whole RGB, old television. And you'll see that when I release my portfolio next week. But I loved,
coming soon.
Yes. Yeah. I loved that whole concept where it's change. And I've leaned a lot on that, prism and the spectrum of light shooting through into a dark room. I truly love that, and that chromatic aspect of it. And I was sad because that actually delayed my portfolio, because I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore, because I didn't want it
you
to
don't want to
cheap.
be like considered part of the bandwagon.
That's right. Well, and I didn't want it to feel cheap, because as I saw it being used by another brand, I was like, that's not good. So I found more of a glitch concept, and it actually worked better.
Yeah, and it looks really cool. Chris has been sharing. We chat like not daily, but almost daily, and he's been sharing with me a lot of his promotional materials that he's putting together for his new site. And by the time this actually is released, it will actually be live. So check out a link down in the description, the show notes, and be sure to check it out. But it's really cool the stuff that you're, creating there.
Thank you.
I actually want to backtrack. Let's actually talk about Dribbble. I was going to record an episode about Dribbble and try and put it out, as soon as possible.
This is like a sneak peek, right? We weren't going to talk about this, so now
we weren't going to talk about it. Like I shared all the questions, and then like he had to bring up Dribbble, and so it sparked everything. Yeah. It's crazy because I didn't see the update to the branding right away. It was someone shared it with one of our group chats.
It was me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was you. Okay. And I then go and I'm like looking online. I'm like looking at the comments, and even in our group chat too, everyone sees what it is. It's trying to put lipstick on the pig. It's trying to take the attention off of all the negative publicity that they have been getting for the last, couple weeks last few weeks, in particular.
Yep.
And I love, there was someone that commented, I can't remember if it was on Instagram or if it was on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, okay, how about we not go through and completely destroy this, branding that Dan Cederholm and everyone else, works so hard on.
Yeah.
And instead focus on building a mobile app.
Yeah.
Now,
yep.
I remember because I was at an event in San Diego many years ago where Dan Cederholm and a bunch of the Dribbble people were there.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing someone, I don't remember who it was, but someone on the Dribbble team was like, "Oh yeah, we're currently working on a mobile app."
Yeah, and matter of fact, they had one out. I don't know if you knew this, but they did. They released it, and then I want to say 20, because I started going to the big Dribbble events, the one they'd have in New York and the one that they had in LA. Mm-hmm. So I went to the one in LA. That's actually where I met the Hood Sisters. But they were.
What year was that you went?
It was Hang Time, so it was probably 2017.
I was there, and I don't remember seeing you.
Yeah,
I was there.
I sat next to Peter and Kyle.
Okay,
yep.
I don't remember. Like I was there. Like I drove up there because it's like a 2-3 hour drive.
Yeah, it was at a theater, a Capitol. I think it was Capitol Theater.
Yeah, I think so,
or something like that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, see, this was back in 2016. This was
it was later. So I want to say it was 2017 is when I went.
Yeah, because I'm talking about where I heard them talk about the mobile.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was 2016 at ValioCon in San Diego. I believe that's when it was. And I remember there were people there from Dribbble, and they were talking about it. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're currently working on a mobile app. It will probably be a really big thing with the community and everything." And evidently it did come out. I don't remember it. I don't remember hearing about it, and evidently it doesn't exist anymore.
No, they actually got rid of it. I was on the beta test.
That's what everybody wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody wanted a Dribbble app because that way you could just pull it up on your phone, wouldn't have to have it saved on your phone's screen and everything. You could just like go to it, check it out.
Yep.
And they never really got it off the ground. I hate to say it, but I feel like Dribbble is done for. I did the podcast episode number 23 back in, I think, 2021. And I basically said, I didn't publicly like share this episode, but I put it out there where I said the unfortunate decline of Dribbble.
Yeah.
And it still rings true today.
Yeah. And it's hard. I think product market fit, I'm a designer that does product, right? So I can talk about that. But I think product market fit is rough because I think they're trying to make money, right? I was okay with paying the 20 or whatever amount it was for a month or something like that. I was okay with paying it, but I think that there were so many different directions they go. Could they be a recruiting tool? Could they be a place to get you leads? Could they be who is the user? And I think they decided to make it designers, but then they were like, oh, but we can also make it recruiting. And then, oh, we can also make it freelancers, right? And it really broke up with those personas of having that direction. I always tell people when they're looking at building a product, do one thing good. What did Instagram do? Instagram, and they were different things, but when they finally figured out what they wanted to be, they did that and they made that really, really good. What did Apple do?
Yep.
Apple was really good at making computers, and they wanted to change the way personal computers were. And then later on, they transitioned to where it was more of here's technology, here's mobile devices,
Yep.
but it was still a computer when you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where Dribbble has kind of gone away from is who are they? Then they bought Creative Market. They were bought by Tiny, and so they were in essence gone from this indie computer game. I'm going to use that as this perspective, right? And then they were bought by a company. It's like, okay, generate revenue. And I don't think that's not what Dan had in mind. I think it was a project. I don't want to call it a pet project. It was a project that he was like, okay, wow, I found success in here. Designers love design, and they made a home here.
Mm-hmm.
I really actually loved how they created the whole you needed a Dribbble invite to even get on the platform.
Exactly.
And I didn't want it to be like the old boys club. So keep that in mind when I say that. It wasn't about that. It wasn't the, hey, this is for members only. That's not what it was. What I loved about it is it allowed you to, I mean, that's how I got started. Do you mind if I tell the background really quick of how I got started as a designer? So I was a closet designer. I grew up in, I don't mean to get into my family life, but I grew up in an abusive home. Okay. In and out of foster homes because of domestic violence and violence upon myself. So I struggled with feedback. It was always like, hey, I'll fix it. And that's what I did. I took it upon myself. And as I've grown throughout the years, I've learned listening is better than telling someone that I'm going to do something and then changing. I'm not really learning from that of how to be better. But I was a closet designer. I didn't want feedback. I didn't want any of that stuff. But I love designing. When Steve Jobs introduced the App Store, I was like, this is going to be revolutionary. And it has been, right? We're in 2023 and we've seen that. And what I found is my good buddy of mine, Chris Pears, he said to me, he said, Chris, he was going to do an app with me. I was just going to be the CEO. I wanted to just sell it and just basically blow it up, right? I was going to do marketing too. And he goes, I showed him some of the designs of different things that I had, like, hey, I want to take this further, yada, yada. And he goes, this is amazing. He goes, did you design this? And I said, yeah, I did. And he goes, this is amazing. He goes, look, I don't want to come in as a designer. He goes, I've already got a lot of stuff going on right now. He goes, and I'm working at a startup with you. He goes, here's what I'll do. You've earned a Dribbble invite. Go. And he said, and build stuff. And that was in 2012, 2013. And from there, I blew up. 2 years later, after losing a job, I went and started that. I was like, cool. I started Colors, and that's where I kind of built out and started building color. I had Color apps first and Colors websites, and I just started building that out. But that's what that was meant for, was finding great talent.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, it wasn't even just that too. It was also the whole thing about having the invite structure was also to get people talking.
Yeah.
Because the only way you could get an invite was by talking to a current member who had an invite.
Yeah.
And so my experience when I got my invite at Creative South from Lenny Terenzi, it was like I was going up to people and I was talking to them and I was like, oh, you're on Dribbble? Oh, yeah, I'm trying to get on Dribbble. I'm trying to get, the invite and everything, but I can't seem to find someone. And I'll always remember Mike Jones, founder of Creative South, raises his hand and he's like, hey, who needs a Dribbble invite? I raise my hand and literally Lenny is right behind me, pats me on the back. He's like, I got you. And within seconds, I had an invite.
That's wonderful.
Inbox. Like, and look at that. Like, you had to actually talk to people in order to get that.
Yeah.
Like, if I would not have, spoken up, or if I wouldn't have talked to them, if I wouldn't have said anything, then I wouldn't have gotten the invite. I probably would have taken, much longer for me to get one.
Right.
And that invite, led to me getting freelance projects, led to me getting jobs.
Yeah.
And, I feel like now it's at the point where we look back on Dribbble and it's just a nostalgic, kind of like mentality, because not many people are getting as many projects anymore. A lot of the projects are bots. A lot of the people on there are bots.
Oh yeah.
And it's just sad.
Yeah. Cause it's, it's open. There's no verification of who you are. We've seen it multiple times from several of our friends who have had their projects stolen and put on Twitter. I mean, we deal with that, and I'm sure that's what Behance also deals with. I mean, Scott has actually done a fantastic job when he sold that to Dribbble, sold it to Adobe Behance, and so it's definitely something where there's a change. So I don't like the brand. I'll come out straight out and say it. I don't like the brand. I personally am nostalgic to it. It's worse than Slack. Like, I loved Slack's old logo, and I think that I can't remember who did it. Who was the agency who did it? It was Pentagram that did the new brand, and they had a week of hell. Yeah. That's what she always says. Paula says that there's a week of hell. Matter of fact, she shared that at the Hang Time in December 2018.
I think I remember that.
She shared that, and she said that. She goes, we always tell people that if you have a brand with a lot of brand clout, just be aware you're going to have your week of hell or a month of hell. And with this aspect, I don't feel that way about it. I feel like we had this beautiful home, and now people are just ripping things away from it. And it's just to this point where you're like, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, and you kind of get disappointed. But I hope that they can turn things around and figure out how to build a better place for us designers, whether product, animation, brand.
I don't know if I have faith in them anymore, unfortunately. Yeah. Do you know who designed the new Dribbble logo? Like, do we know?
It's just a font. It's an Adobe font. Yeah, you haven't seen the tweets?
No, I haven't been on. I've been so.
Yeah, it's just
so we actually started this interview late.
I'm trying to remember. Evan Place actually tweeted it, and there were several others that did it. It's weird. The OGs talked about it yesterday, the OGs of Dribbble and on Twitter. We talked about it yesterday. I tweeted out yesterday. Now it's the talk of town today. And I'm like looking at it going, I'm like, oh, that's old news. That's yeah, we've already felt our feelings and we moved on.
Yeah, no, like, because I look at that and I'm just like, sorry, for those of you watching the video recording of this, my dog is jumping up wanting attention. No, like, I look at it and I'm like, going back to what we talked about earlier in the episode, it's lacking character. Yeah. In fact, I was going to say, it just looks like it's just typed out. It's not an actual, like, logo itself. It hasn't been customized. It just looks like it's typed. And there it goes. Like, it's you know, you basically proved my point.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy to see that, because it's like the Dribbble, you know, branding, like visual brand identity, has so many amazing touch points. The old brand.
Yeah.
And now seeing them do it, like, even when you see the pink that they use, it's just
washed out.
Neutered.
Yeah,
it's been neutered. It's like, it's not even like, it's just crazy to see that and to think about that. But, you know, we kind of digress. You know, we went down this whole tangent about Dribbble, so I do apologize. Right. Let's get back to you.
Oh, good.
You know, when you found yourself, you know, being laid off and everything like that, you know, I know this from, you know, talking to you quite a bit. You know, you started going on. You did still go on the job hunt.
Yeah,
like, you still applied for jobs. You know, quite a bit. Do you know how many jobs you applied for? Like, do you have an estimate?
I know that I have been in 6 final interviews and not been chosen for an offer. To which based on me doing the legwork to look back at it, 4 of those positions was eliminated within a month after they were hired. Yeah, and then the other 3 I think are still there. Or no, 3 of them, so half of them. I'm sorry. It was like 6 or 7 that I think have been. And then it's been quite interesting to see kind of the concept around it of interviewing. I've done mass. So in some months I've done 30 to 40 different applications, to where I have not even talked to somebody and they've already made a judgment that, hey, I wasn't a good fit.
I remember those.
And then other ones where I have gotten to 1 or 2, and I've walked away actually from a couple of them where I was like, I've seen red flags in the previous companies I've worked for. I don't want that.
Yep.
There was a lot that went on in my last job that I'm now looking and saying, I don't want those things. I want stability. My goal is to build a house, man. That's what I want. We have 5 acres of land. I want to build on that 5 acres, and I need stability for my family and myself. But the other thing is too, is it unlocked something. I'm starting an app myself, and Kenny Krosky actually are going to work together. We're meeting tomorrow. But we're actually going to be starting it's a small project right now. We're going to test product market fit, but we have something called Super Leagues, where we are going to take fantasy sports and we're basically going to supercharge it and allow you to draft players who have superpowers attached to them that help you, on top of having the ability to do your normal fantasy things that you're doing. And we'll start out with football and then move our way into the other sports.
I never have been too big in sports myself, but however, I actually did do, when I think I was in college or high school, I did fantasy wrestling.
Yeah, everybody has, right?
I ever got to it.
We've all had our moments with fantasy, and we've either said, "Oh, this is addictive," or we say, "Not so much." Right? My biggest thing is that I'm really actually focused on 2 areas. Is I love gamers, and it's like, how do you attract those people? They understand how Diablo works and how they build a character there, right? Or they understand how RPGs work, right? They role-playing games online. They understand all those. So it's how do you take that world and you bring it into a draft strategy, and how do you create that? So if it wasn't for the position I was in when I left book club, right, when I left my previous company, then I never would have I never would have been pushed into this situation. So when something like this happens, again, I talked to a good friend of mine today. I was talking to them and said, look, when things like that happen, breathe, feel it. Don't hide the feelings. Be angry, sad, whatever feeling you want to feel. Just feel like it's been lifted off of you, whatever it is. Yep. From there, once you feel, look at your options. You have nothing to lose. At that very point, you've already lost what you have. It's like, what can I change here? What are the values that I offer? And the second thing is, don't ever let a company be letting you go or you walking away from it make you feel like a failure. Or second thing is make you feel like your skills didn't matter. Because I went through that in the month of April. It was really hard. Yeah. I had actually I thought I was actually going to get a new position. I was talking with a good friend of mine and didn't get it. And in the month of April, I'm like, is it me? Did I do something? Am I not a good product designer? And what I found is no, it wasn't me. What it was that's the way companies do. They do what's best for the company. And being an owner of a company, I understand it. I don't agree with it. And I think that practices should be put in place for these companies, but it's unfortunate how it does sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like when you think about it too, like, and I don't know if this is preached. I mean, it is still preached today.
Yep.
Like I go all the way back to 2016 when I got fired from my job at an agency, and I think about how them in particular preach so much about how employees were kind of like family, or that it's all about the employees, it's not about the company.
Yeah.
And yet what they preach internally, or what they preach to, hire people, that's what they would say.
Yeah.
Internally though, it was very clear that it was about the company needs to come first.
Yeah.
The company needs to come first. And you see that a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in the startup world, where they preach one thing, but they do the other. They say like, oh, every employee matters.
Yep.
Okay. The stocks went down, 0.1%.
Yep.
We now have to have drastic layoffs. It's ridiculous, the stuff that you see.
Yep.
And, you would think that by now these startups would understand like, hey, there are downturns, there are ways to hedge those downturns, ways of getting around it. I mean, look at, I don't know how much this is true, but I just recently heard about this. Ford Motor Company, a company that's been around for well over 100 years. They they can see the writing on the wall when things are about to, possibly get tough.
Right.
And they take out financial loans so that they are covered during those times, and then they repay them back during the good times. They make sure that they can survive. And that's why you don't necessarily always see Ford is laying off a ton of workers. You see a lot of the other companies are doing it. And layoffs suck.
Yeah, they do.
We can all agree on that. There's nothing good about a layoff except that it can push you, just like you kind of were talking about, it can kind of push you into the right situation.
Right. Well, and that leads to the fact of we have to stop thinking like when you run a business comes in with 3 or 4 different avenues of revenue, right? They've got marketing revenue where it's partnership. They've got revenue from their product. That's actually one thing when Kenny and I have talked in the past, I'm like, hey, when we build Super Leagues, I want to have a profit first company where we have profitability, not where we're going out and getting a loan. That's what raising money is, getting a loan from VCs to be able to build this. And I know sometimes you have to take that, and I'm okay with doing it, but I want to make sure that we just weigh out what we have in mind.
Yeah.
But it's the big part about it is runway. Now you have to look at it from your perspective. Is that as a designer, which this is the audience you're speaking to, right? As a designer, the first thing that you need to do is set up multiple streams of income. I don't think you need to go and we're seeing a trend right now where everyone's trying to be a thought leader inside of design. I'll come out and say it. I loathe it. I think this is the most stupidest thing. If you want to help people, that's who I've always been. Like, hey, I'd love to be able to post. I love posting questions on my Twitter. If you go there at Colorful Chris, you'll see that a lot of times I'm asking these questions because I want to know how that is. That's what I do for product design. I ask questions to that. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on with everything. And the thing I struggle with though is that like, hey, within 10 steps you can become a better product designer. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily true. You can still create. You don't have to be a thought leader. That's the point I want to make. You can still create different things. Like you want to create a wallpaper. I know there's a gentleman by the name of Ollie. He created wallpaper and he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars off wallpapers. If you want to create a font, go sell a font. There are different ways that you can make money. Etsy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're doing different things that have allowed you to make more income, right? And that's the piece where I think you have to really focus on it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. It's like you look at the Hood Sisters, and I think they're the perfect example of this, where they have their typefaces, they have their merch, they have their courses and everything. I actually don't have a lot of different income streams. It's something I've been trying to do, but I keep getting busy. I keep getting into the trap of having too much client work. And then it's not until you find those moments where it's like, okay, here's the downturn. Now I need to do this.
Yes.
And I think that going back to what you're talking about with thought leaders, I think that there's a fine line between a thought leader and a like fake guru. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing so much of because like, I remember in 2018 when I was at the height of posting on social media and everything, and I would be called an influencer, the term I loathe. Like I hated that term so much. I would get called it when I went to conferences, and I was like, I would literally go the Grinch where I loathe that completely. But thought leader, that I can get around. Like I can get behind that. I can get behind thought leader because I feel like it has a completely different connotation.
Right.
But you have so many people who are flooding into this.
Yeah.
And who are, posting these things like you were talking about, like 6 ways to become an all-star, product designer. And things like that.
Yeah.
I think that every piece of content that people put out like that, they need to put a caveat. And they need to say, these are the 6 things that I have used to help me get to where I am. Might not work for you, or they might not be able to be replicated in the same way because there are certain circumstances.
That's right.
Be honest,
that's right.
About it. And that's why, like, when I do this podcast, I don't make any money on the podcast. I'll tell you that right now. There's no sponsorships, though. Liquid Death, if you are listening, I would,
none yet.
Love a Liquid Death sponsorship. I want that freaking cooler that they had. They have like a fridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like $3,000, and I'm
after the stream. Send me a picture. I want to see this thing.
But like, I make zero money off of this podcast. In fact, I lose money on this podcast because I pay, for an editor. I pay for a designer to help out because I don't have the time to do it myself. I pay the monthly fees to have the podcast up and running. I pay all the other, costs that you don't think about. I wouldn't be surprised if like, I probably this month, I probably have, spent over $1,000 on the podcast, and that's not money that I'm making back from it.
Right.
But this is money that I look at it this way. I would rather spend the money to create this podcast than to just like donate it to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. You and I both know that we're at a crossroad right now. I think that a lot of people here, I have had a lot of friends who have reached out to me and said, hey, I want you to apply here. I actually have a good friend of mine who I reached out to and was like, hey, look, I've never been a principal product designer, but I know how to do the role. I've had also a good friend of mine, Maxim. He has said to me, he's like, no, stop applying for senior product roles. You're lower than it. Apply for principal product roles. He goes, you know how to do it. Do it. And to me, I've never worked that, right? So I've been applying for those, and I had a good friend of mine I reached out to, and him and I had a conversation. I'll keep his name unknown here, but him and I had a conversation around this, and he said, you will not believe how many people have applied for this job who do not have the experience you do. And after my interview, he's like, see, that's the experience I want.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Now I don't have that job. No, this isn't me making an announcement, but it's those conversations I keep having that a lot of, yes, I know. Actually, I would love that, because the job that the person that I'm be working with is a wonderful, fantastic human being. And he would be a great leader that I would love to work for. But, so yes, please. I'd love some of that podcast love. But he mentioned to me, he goes, I even tweeted about it. Like, do people know what a principal product designer is? Like, do they know how many years? 2 or 3 people who have 2 or 3 years. But when money was cheap, okay, during from 2012, probably to about, I want to say 2022, money was cheap, right? Right now we know the economy is on hold. Money's not cheap anymore. Facebook or Meta was paying hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what they should have been paying for designers. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I've talked to people where designers were sitting around and making a living.
Yeah.
And at that point, we had all these people who were like, we've seen this in the real estate agent there in real estate market too, right? There were so many real estate agents. And then this year, 600,000 real estate agents didn't renew their license. Mm-hmm. So boot camps, the 6-week process. I'm 11 years and I'm still learning. 12 years and I'm still learning product design.
Oh yeah. I mean, even with me, like I've been doing design since I was in high school.
Yeah.
And if I go that far back, I've been doing it for almost 20 years.
Yep.
And I still learn stuff every single day.
Yeah.
And I feel like the people who think that they know everything are the people who shouldn't be doing this, because you need to be able to learn and get better. And Absolutely. To go back to what you're talking about, like give with that example of the real estate agents and everything, the realtors, like if you think about it, with the current education system for design, and I'm actually going to be doing an episode on this, so I'm not going to go super detailed into it, but right now, so many universities, so many colleges, all they focus on are numbers, getting people out the door.
Correct.
But with creative careers like design, you cannot just be throwing people to the wolves like that.
That's correct. Yep.
I look back at my own experience in college. This is why I constantly tell people you do not have to go to college for design degrees.
Right.
It's a waste of time in my mind.
Right.
Because I saw, I think we started off with 128 designers in the my program at freshman year.
Yeah.
And it whittled down from 128 to 32.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Over time, because of portfolio reviews and people, at first they weren't like letting everybody through. Then when it got to the point of getting close to this, or senior year where everybody's putting out stuff, you look at the work that was up on the wall, because we did a reveal where you had like a gallery setting, you had all your work up on the walls, and you look at that and you really think about it. More than 3/4 of the work on the wall was not good enough. It was not good enough to, and when I say that, I don't mean to disparage upon them, onto my former classmates and everything. What I mean is it was not good enough to get an entry level job.
Yeah.
That was the biggest crime, in my opinion. And there are programs out there that aren't like that at all.
Right.
Like, they actually focus on the students. They help the students. They teach them what they need to learn.
Right.
But I would say as much as 80% of the programs out there, they don't care. They care about the money that's being brought in. They care about the numbers, and that is it.
Yeah, and we've seen it here. Become a designer in 3 months. Become a designer in 2 months. Become a designer in 6 weeks. And it's like, now all of a sudden become a designer in a month with a certification. And product design's rough. I can't.
Product design is a whole different beast.
Yeah, product design is rough. Like we have to come up with things, and we're dealing with our own stuff with design systems and how UI kits have basically taken away a lot of our. My favorite app of all time has been Facebook Paper, back when Facebook to me was actually doing cool things. But
I don't even remember that.
It was so cool. Like, they would have animations and you would have full-fledged. They pushed the bounds of design within it, and it was you could go through, and when you would swipe, it would spin. So you get this 3D effect where it would spin to different topics, and I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. The big part about it is that I saw that's what I think designs should be. I think as we look at Facebook with all the different things that they have going on, they just took threads and they copied. And that's what we're doing, is we're just taking use this UI kit and create this product. And it's like, but you're missing the point. What are the problems we're seeking to solve? What is the company values and strategy that we're seeking after? One of the things that I've always wanted to do was have create another Dribbble. You and I have had multiple conversations about this, creating another Dribbble competitor, something that goes back to the basics. I won't do it unless I have a unique identifier to know why I'm doing it, something that's completely different. I'm not going to go and just copy and paste their product and make something and add a few new features here. I'm not going to do it. Now, when I figure that out, and I know what I'm going to do there, that's different. But until then, I think that's what we're doing, though, in industries. It's like, we'll just take and do a small unique identifier for us versus them. And it's the same product over and over and over again.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you look at over the years and everything, the amount of social media apps that have creeped up all over the place, and that have been this is going to be the new this, or this is going to be the new that. And you have all these people, they go to it for the first, couple of days, week maybe, and then it just drops off. Threads is the newest one on the block. And honestly, I haven't been on it for 3 months. I got, I have on Twitter, on Twitter, I have over 3,000, maybe 600, followers. I surpassed that in 2 days on Threads, and then it stopped. It was it just surpassed the Twitter mark and then just stopped growing after that. Yeah. And I was just and I'm going on there and I'm the functionality is not here. Why aren't you just doing this in beta instead of just putting it out there? You're trying to ride the coattails of people getting tired of Elon Musk.
Right.
And everything.
Right.
It makes no sense.
But that's what Blue Sky did, and then there was Mastodon, I think, was the other one.
Yep, I remember that one. Yep.
And so they come and go, and it's I guess, again, if you have, what made Instagram different was it was pictures. It was this big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who came out with stories, but please stop putting them in your apps. Like, we don't need them, and we need to figure out another.
Everything has stories. YouTube has stories now.
It's like having a keyboard. It's like having a keyboard in an app now, is that it's the norm of having that. And that's the only way we know how to display content. That's the only way. And I like that TikTok came along and was like, well, we're not going to do stories. We're going to do something different. And we're going to create it to where we have this evolution of social 2.0. And I think there needs to be a social 3.0 now. But it's just, there's definitely this is the part that I struggle with in our industry, is that it just feels like everything is the same. And that I just posted this actually on Twitter. It's 1984. Remember when Apple had her running out and she broke the screen, and in 1984 we were going to show you something different. This is what needs to happen now within our products. Okay. Yeah. Look at Slack and look at Discord. Do the same thing, but they both have their identities and brands.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And the big thing about Slack too is Slack could have just made another email client, another app for email, but they thought, how do I make communication better at the workplace?
Yeah. And I mean, they weren't even the only ones on the block at that. What was the other chat?
Rocket Chat. Remember that?
No, there was one more. There was HipChat, I think was what it was called.
Which was Atlassian. That was Atlassian.
Okay. Yeah, see, that was my first introduction into that world of chat. And now are they even still around? Like, I feel like Slack has become such the norm when it comes to company communications and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see like the evolution here. Like, things are going to come, things are going to go.
Right.
So let's try actually, I know we have like gone so far off topic so many times.
Yes.
It's crazy. So, let me just ask you, because like you have been out there, you have been at, constantly, seeing the trends of people applying for jobs and job postings and things like that. I'm curious if there are any specific things that you're seeing that are red flags when it comes to job postings or even in interviews too that you're seeing.
Yeah. So a lot of times I'm noticing, and it's not just me, I'm actually reading about them too, is that people are putting up jobs just to put up jobs to show growth. So I have been seeing that. That's oftentimes that's why you don't get a response for a long time, or you do get a response,
or you don't get one at all.
Yeah. Yep. Or you don't get one. Yeah. There's been ones that I haven't got one at all. And I keep I keep a Notion doc for every single one that I apply for, and then I set the level of what it's at. And typically within our space, there's usually a hiring manager that you'll have an interview with, a recruiter that you'll have an interview with, a case study review, and then you'll meet with several people on the team. Sometimes it is. The other thing I'm noticing too is it's such a long process. I remember 2 to 3 weeks was usually about how long you would wait. 6 or 7 sometimes. I'm going into the next. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm going into sometimes the next months. And so that's one aspect. Another aspect I've noticed is that people don't know what they want. So these companies are trying to go with their ebbs and flows as you're trying to get with their ebbs and flows. And I think that's why I've heard some of the companies who hired that person other than me let that person go later was because they didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's crazy to kind of think about this, because think about 2020 and 2021 compared to now, where there was such demand, an insatiable demand from companies for talent.
Yes.
They wanted the talent. They needed the talent. And so they were hiring, sometimes they were creating like huge amounts of jobs because they thought that there was going to be huge amounts of growth coming up. And now you go into 2022, fall, like we'll say like starting in summer, I think was when it really started happening.
Yep.
Where all of a sudden you're starting to see all these layoffs happening. You're seeing all these people who are flooding the job markets. And if you actually think about it, in reality, what was happening was it wasn't necessarily that, there was a financial crisis and that's why they were laying people off. What happened was the startups, the companies themselves had manufactured their own financial crisis in that they hired as much talent as quickly as possible without even needing the talent themselves. They're like, okay, we need to hurry up and snatch these people up before someone else does. And that was I feel like that was the catalyst for the crisis that we're going through with all of these layoffs. Is that it was a completely self-manufactured issue. There's people blame everybody else, but they don't think about like the main issue that it comes about. And now we're in this, this issue, this big problem where you had people who had great jobs. They had jobs of security that left them because they were in such high demand for an extra 10 to 20% of income, and now they're without jobs. Now, people are flooding not only the job market, but they're flooding the freelancing market.
And matter of fact, I've actually talked with 3 people who are actually building out freelancing right now. And myself included, trying to find freelance jobs. But what I found is that people go into these situations like, hey, so we hired this person on. I just had a brand reach out to me, and I referred them to someone because I wasn't familiar with the brand in the municipal marijuana space. But I remember them saying like, hey, it's crazy because we've talked to several designers and it feels like they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a correlation there. Remember this that we just talked about where we had, like my situation where there was a lot of people in my graduating class who weren't ready. You're having all these people who flooded the market who weren't ready. They got the jobs. They realized they weren't ready. They got laid off or fired. Now they're flooding the freelance market, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to go about it. We just signed a new client last week. And they came to us because they actually had a designer that they were working with, a freelancer that they were working with, who just completely ghosted them in the middle of the project.
Really?
Just
completely I hate that. I hate it when I'm done by a recruiter like that. I hate it when people do it. It's like, even when I get messages on LinkedIn when they're like, hey, are you interested? I always send that automated mission. Yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not.
Yeah. But there are times where I get inquiries that I admit I don't respond. If they're not the right fit, or they're clearly spam, or they're clearly tire kickers and things like that.
Yes.
But I try never to ghost someone in the middle of a conversation, or especially in the middle of a project.
Yeah.
Because even though like the world is so huge, the startup and tech industry is so small.
It is.
When you really look at the grand scheme of things, that that person that you ghosted could be working at an even bigger company, and they see, oh, this person is trying to contract with us. I had a bad experience. I'm not going to hire them.
Right.
So you have to be careful with stuff like that. But
absolutely,
hearing that, and then especially hearing that so many freelancers are having trouble finding clients.
Yeah. Quality clients. Quality clients. Yep.
But here's the part that I've noticed whenever I talk to freelancers. I have freelancers reach out to me all the time about this. They ask questions like, hey, how do I get clients? How do I find work?
Yep.
And I ask them, what are you doing? And you know what they say? I post work. That's all I'm doing, is I'm posting work, hoping that they're going to reach out to me. And unfortunately, that worked years ago.
Yes.
Just posting work on social media. Yep. You would generally get leads from that. Yes.
Yes.
However, the thing that people need to start doing is they need to start reaching out themselves, and not just to their network.
Right.
They need to start doing cold outreach. How do you think that design studios, agencies, and freelancers were getting work 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
It wasn't just posting work. It was also like reaching out and following up. We actually, I have on the books for tomorrow, we're going to be discussing our outbound marketing strategy for the last, quarter of the year and going into the first quarter of next year. Even though we are booked solid for up into October, I want to make sure that we hedge our bets and we are having those conversations, because when you do outbound marketing, it's a very good possibility you're not going to get projects right away, but they could come down the line from those emails.
Right. Totally.
And so
agree.
I would rather start now than to wait.
Totally agree. Yeah, I do think that it doesn't hurt, right, to try these different things. Posting's great. Like, I think that's a part of it, but we have to stop thinking that's the only part of our arsenal. A business is multiple areas, right? We have to, if it's product or partner marketing, maybe it's, outbound reach marketing, it may be other areas, but we have to think that way. The Huzba sisters, they have talked about that. They actually have their book that they wrote. What is it? I'm going to say it wrong, so I want you to say it, but it's Fab. What's the initials spell out?
Oh my God, what is it? Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up on here.
Okay,
I'm gonna pull it up on my my computer, because I have it on my shelf somewhere.
I do. I can picture it. It's red. It's white lettering.
Yep.
I have a copy of it in my box because I have it. We're not moving yet.
Believe it or not, all it is there, because they have a course too. I think you might be thinking of the course, because the actual title of their book is Freelance and Business and Stuff.
Yeah, but they call it that those four initials are
FABAS, I believe.
Yeah, FABAS or whatever. Yeah,
FABAS or something like that. Yeah. By the way, we'll include an affiliate link in the show notes.
Yes. Yes.
We might actually make
doing fantastic.
Yeah. But no, like, you look at them and you look at a lot of other design studios who are doing similar things, and there's a lot of great resources out there. I'm actually going to plug, even though I don't think I have an affiliate link or anything like that with them. And the only reason I'm going to plug this is because he's a good friend of mine, Ben Burns, who is with The Future and Blind. Which I think Blind is actually gone now. I don't think it actually. Is it around? I'm not sure.
No. I think he followed The Future, I think that's when it went away.
Okay. So right now, Ben Burns has this kind of membership course. And what it is, it's interesting, because I was talking to him a few weeks back. We were talking till like 2 a.m. in the morning about a bunch of stuff. And he was telling me about this awesome new program that they have where he's leading it. And it's kind of like Business Boot Camp, which was their primary cash cow course that they had, except for this one is, I think it's like $100 a month.
Yeah.
And it basically is a hands-on course of like building your freelance business or building your creative business.
Okay.
And in order to continue on through the course of it, you actually have to submit like work and submit exercises.
Really?
Like, they have like actual homework for you, and they grade it. Like, they actually will tell you like, okay, you know what? That was a good start. Why don't you go in and change these few things and
get so they creative directed. I like that.
Exactly. And I don't think it's actual design work. It's actually business work, from what I understand. And so they do this before you can move on. And so instead of just saying like, great, you passed the initial test or whatever, where you just submit something.
Right.
They actually go in and they, are interacting with you. It's almost like, a course that you would get in college.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, stuff like the Hood Sisters, like, these resources are out there and it's easy to obtain them. Yes, absolutely. Like, you have to pay money for them, but they definitely help out. And I'm sitting here and I cannot, for the life of me, remember how in the world we got on to talking about this.
Oh, with just with the sense of like different things that you can do in your business. I think we went on the topic of marketing, but in the aspect of this, I think the big point is that, yes, you need to educate yourself on doing different things. And there are so many resources out there. So many resources.
Yeah, so many. All right, we are at like over an hour now. So I think we should probably wind this down.
Okay.
But Chris, what are some of the things that you're currently working on that you want to give a quick shout out to on the podcast? I know you've kind of talked a little bit about a few things, organically, but why don't you use this as a platform for you?
Yeah. So right now I'm working on my portfolio. I am building that out because I want to showcase me and who I am. I rebranded myself. That's another thing you may want to think about as you've had these different layoffs and things happen. Think about who you really are. Your portfolio may be something you did several years ago. And I do think that it is key right now. A lot of people will push back and say, don't do your portfolio. You get a job. It's not like that right now. Do your portfolio. One of the things that I'm pushing for is animation. And so there will be more animation on mine. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. Another thing is I'm working on Super Leagues and really trying to get that off the ground. Again, working my hardest to make sure that's creating a good experience there. Also honing my skills. I don't want, obviously, while I'm waiting for a job, I'm trying to make sure I have stuff that's going on. Figma just came out with a bunch of new things for me to learn too. So it's been nice to actually use a side project to do that. And then lastly, I've been mulling this over, and I think that's one of the things that I've been doing. Actually, two things. One is I'm actually trying to create a website called Colorful for design resources. So your podcast, other podcasts that can go on there and basically do it. Haven't come up with the full details on it yet, but that is something I'm going to start working on to help out the community. And lastly, I've actually started to do some volunteer work with Product Hive. They are locally here in Utah, LA, and then New York. I think there's a couple other smaller cities that we're in too. But doing product design events. We have Design Week coming up here in October for Salt Lake. And so we're going to really push. Raji, a good friend of mine, Raji King's going to actually be there. We're going to get a couple more people there. Yeah, we're going to get a couple more people there. And I know really be able to help people in the product design space. So I've been trying to volunteer and trying to help our community.
That's really awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I also really appreciate the time, jumping on here. I think, what was it, last week that I asked you, like, hey, do you want to be on the podcast?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we just talked for over an hour, which
love the
honestly, like if people knew, like there's times where we're just talking on the phone for like 45 minutes to over an hour anyway. So it kind of just like feels just like that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time, your energy, and just like going through this crazy world of discussions that we kind of went through there. And, for those of you who are not or have not listened to the podcast before or new to the podcast, please remember to hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening to this episode. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the like button on this video and make sure to turn on notifications in case you want to see more of these amazing videos. Hopefully they are amazing. If you would like to get featured on a regular podcast, not a guest episode, but a regular episode, definitely send us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or just engage with us on Twitter. We like to try and give a quick little shout out to one lucky listener on every regular episode. But other than that, please always just remember that there's always going to be downsides or downturns in the economy, in business, in freelancing, ebbs and flows and everything like that. Stay the course and just know that it will get better. And as always, everyone, remember to stay passionate, stay positive, and stay creative. That's it for us today. Hope you guys have a great day, and bye.